One of the most controversial topics in today's NBA is the 2025 draft lottery, as the former Lakers legend Shaquille O'Neal shared the moment when he was about to be drafted back in 1992. It seems like the NBA knows better than anyone else in terms of who will land where, and the latest statement from O'Neal makes it a bit harder for us to believe that the Luka Dončić trade was not a sacrifice for the future of the Mavericks as well as the Lakers. But can something be done regarding this matter? And has the truth finally come out on the surface? There is no doubt about it. The Luka Dončić trade shocked the entire NBA world. Hell, even Dončić broke his phone in disbelief. The player who brought the Mavs to the finals last year and made them Western Conference champions has now all of a sudden been traded to a high-market team, the Lakers. It was a shocking development of events, but a couple of months later, the draft lottery might have revealed to us the real reason why Nico Harrison, the GM of Dallas, has opted out of a move like this. Being 11th placed for receiving the number 1 pick with just a 1.8% chance, the Mavs have won the draft lottery and now have the opportunity to pick the generational talent Cooper Flagg. In their defense, the Spurs were 12th and they jumped to 2nd, but nevertheless, the storyline is revolving around Dallas and the controversial Luka trade. Did they do this on purpose? A statement from O'Neal might have given us a clear clue as to in which direction we should be thinking. Back in 1992, the center entered the draft lottery with a massive chance of being selected first, and 3 months before the draft, the then commissioner David Stern had a very interesting conversation with Shaq. Elaborating further on this conversation, O'Neal said, "Stern says to me, 'Hey, can't wait for you to come to the NBA.' Then he pulled me off to the side. 'You want to play where it's cold or where it's hot?' He asked me that. Yeah, he did. He asked me that, and I was like, 'Hot.' And he smiled, and I smiled." The controversy here, the question in and of itself, but for those of you who might have forgotten and remember Shaq only from his Lakers days, let me serve you a dish of fresh reminder. He was drafted by the Orlando Magic. Orlando is in the state of Florida, so it barely gets any hotter than that. It seems like Shaq's wish got fulfilled, and all of this gives us an opportunity to think that the NBA might play a big game in order to make sure that the sport will remain relevant by making these big moves. Furthermore, Shaq concluded, "You hear a lot of these conspiracy theories, and there are a lot of situations that could make these things sound good and sound true. It's very interesting how the 2025 draft lottery played out. But is the 2025 draft pick the only controversial story we've had in the history of the NBA? Definitely not, and we shouldn't even go that far away to see one of them. Back in 2019, the Pelicans traded their superstar Anthony Davis to the Lakers, and they were given the first pick in the upcoming draft, one in which they chose Zion Williamson. It seems like these situations are done in a time where the draft has a high prospect to offer, and it wouldn't surprise us that Nico Harrison knew all along about the draft pick when he made probably the toughest decision in his career. After all, the Mavs became the 4th team in NBA history to win the lottery with odds below 2%, and the team with the 4th lowest odds to win since the lottery began back in 1985. It's easy to see why NBA players are not believing the narrative of the draft lottery being a fair one. LeBron James responded with smiley faces on X, while Kevin Durant emphasized how tanking is very stressful for one organization. The entire point of the new concept of the draft lottery is that they would prevent teams from tanking, as many teams would just lose games on purpose in order to win the lottery. This was the main principle behind the 76ers, the project, which has now fallen apart with Ben Simmons being traded and Joel Embiid being hurt. So did Nico Harrison turn from a very hated man, one that received threats for his life, to a very loved individual in the rows of the Mavs? One can hardly tell, because drafting Cooper doesn't automatically mean they have fixed the issue of not having Luka on the team. Let's not forget that this is the man who has been carrying his team throughout the last couple of seasons, and now that he has help in the form of Kyrie Irving and Klay Thompson, the team has a solid base to work on. But that is all in the past, and the future is now. Cooper Flagg will have the most pressurized role in the history of the sport, all because of something that he might not even be aware of. On the other hand, we've seen controversies in the NBA draft lottery that will really make you scratch your head and ask the NBA gods, what is wrong with this sport? Let's go a bit back in time and unfold the Patrick Ewing trade in the New York Knicks. The team finished the 1984/85 season with a 24-58 score, and they haven't made it past the conference semi-final stage since winning a championship back in 1973. There were tons of rumours that the NBA was desperate to have a competitive team in New York to help the league's commercial growth, but the team wasn't that bad to receive the #1 pick. Interestingly enough, the first ever NBA draft lottery was held in 1985, and an envelope containing the New York Knicks logo was indeed plucked from the hopper first, ensuring that they will choose first in the upcoming draft. The expectations were fulfilled. They went on to pick Patrick Ewing, as the Hall of Famer became an 11-time NBA All-Star during the 15-year stint with the Knicks. Even more importantly, the Knicks didn't win a championship thanks to this trade, but it was very important to give them a player that brought back the boost of the team's popularity. The conspiracy has gone as far as saying that the Knicks logo was frozen, so the commissioner, David Stern, could differentiate it from the other letters. Let's not forget that Stern, who passed away in 2020, was a New York native, so it's definitely not a help for the entire narrative. 40 years from now, there is not strong proof that the first lottery was rigged, but it definitely gives us a lot to think about what's happening in 2025. What's next for the entire NBA world then? As Durant said, it must be very hard for an organisation to tank, and if we are to look at the outcome of the lottery, the 76ers, even though picking high at third, might not receive nearly what they hoped for before the miserable season started. Furthermore, the Spurs chose a high-profile prospect in Wemby back in 2023, so 2 years later they will choose second, which is another suggestion that they are very likely to bring a lot of value to the Spurs in terms of a championship contender. Or maybe the Spurs can use this pick in order to trade for a player in his prime, Antetokounmpo for example. But nevertheless, they have the assets and they can use them as they wish. As for Dallas, they would have to prove that this move is something that would bring them a lot of success, and if they are able to keep Anthony Davis in a healthy form, then the addition of Flagg is only going to help them to a greater extent. Having two elite players like Irving and Thompson will also help a lot in the backcourt situation, so with all this in mind, do you think that the 2025 NBA draft was rigged? And more importantly, what do you think about O'Neal's situation? Let us know in the comments below, and once you do that, make sure to click on the video that appears on your screen right now.